Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and an all-balanced breakfast. I am Chains. Welcome to the Chains Project. Today's reading is the story of the Tower of Babel, Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 to 9. I love towers. They're fun to jump out of, and then you hit the ground, and hopefully there's something soft there, like concrete, so you don't die. Now, the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as they migrated from the east, they came upon a plain in the land of Shinar, and settled there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks, and burn them thoroughly." And they had brick for stone, and bitumen for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower with its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, otherwise we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth." The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which mortals had built. And the Lord said, "Look, they are all one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth. And they left off building the city. Therefore it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Alright, so everybody speaks the same language, no more confusing, silly, dumb languages like Arabic. Kidding. And then everybody gets together and like, let's make some bricks. And to make bricks we must light them on fire. If you've ever played Age of Empires 2, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So they lit their bricks on fire and they stuck them together and they're like, we should build a city out of these bricks instead of just having a giant pile of bricks over there. So they take their flaming bricks and they turn them into buildings and houses, and they're like, you know what would be awesome? Building a tower. And you know how tall we build a tower? We'll put it, the top of it, in God's living room, because that's just how we roll. So they start building their tower, and then God's like, what is going on down there? And he walks down, he's like, alright, well, I think I'm going to make you guys not understand one another. So he changes all their language, and then some guy comes up and he's like, hey, do you got any muffins? And some other guy's like, I know what you're talking about. And they don't know what they're talking about, and they get all confused, and then they leave because they're very confused. And then God says, ha, and it's called Babel now because whenever anybody was there, they're babbling on about nonsense because they're crazy people. Alright, so this chapter talks about languages. It's a very important thing, I feel, because language has been around since approximately 100,000 BC. It's a while, you know, we've gotten pretty good at it. It's also a sign that we were made in the likeness of God, because God can talk, and so can we, but no other animals can talk, that we know of. But I have a very good suspicion that those parrots outside my window are getting on to me or something. I don't know what's going on. But what is believed to be the oldest language is the one that we're talking about right now, because the chapter starts off saying everybody had one language and the same words, so that means that there was originally one prime language that everybody knew, and then God was mean and screwed it up. But there's been a lot of argument and speculation about what this one language was. Some people believe that the first language is Hebrew because that's the language that the earliest accounts of the Bible were actually written in, but there is no biblical validation about this. But some linguists, the people who study language, it's a pretty cool name in my opinion, have said that the oldest written language is a tie between either Egyptian or Sumerian, which is from about 3200 BC. That's about over 5,000 years ago from today. But some believe just because it's written doesn't mean that it's, the oldest language. Of course, that's the easiest way to date it. But some believe that actually Albanian, which is spoken in north of Greece area, is actually the oldest language. Even though it was only first written down in the 15th century, which is just barely 500 years ago. It's believed to have been spoken much, much longer, almost a couple millennia longer than that, because of an account by a Roman citizen who was living in Egypt during Roman rule, who wrote in Greek for some reason. That's a triple triangle of confusion just for you, named Ptolemy, who recorded Albanian actually being spoken in the 1st century BC. So is Albanian or Sumerian or Egyptian the language that this story is talking about? From my standpoint, most likely not, just because that it was probably some language that's been dead forever pretty much now, and because it was one language that was pretty much ruling the earth at that period of time. And because God messed it up, is that, people just stopped speaking it. Kind of like how when the Roman Empire was walking around, they all just spoke Latin! Yeah, that language. And then it eventually just petered out. And now nobody speaks Latin unless you're like a law student or a weirdo linguistic person. So it's just proof that even if the language is ruling, and the Roman Empire, one of my favorite empires by the way, owned the crap out of everything and just had a huge plot of land, and then now nobody speaks this language. It's just proof that no matter how powerful a language is, it can die out eventually. Okay, now on to the good part of the story, and that is a big question of why did God make everybody not know what language they're speaking? And I've decided that there are two plausible options. The first option is that they were breaking a rule that God set forth in Genesis 9:1, where he said, be fruitful, multiply, and spread across the earth. Or number two, God's a giant dick. Alright, for the first option, God does lay out in Genesis 9:1 that he says, be fruitful and, spread out across the earth. Now they're kind of doing that. They're being fruitful, but they're being fruitful at one point and kind of spreading out from there, kind of. And they're trying to build a tower to go up to God's living room, which is kind of not a thing that he wants to have happen, I would imagine. I don't like towers in my living room. I don't think you would either. So because they're breaking one of his rules, he decides, I'm going to go make them not understand each other. So he walks down from his magical staircase to heaven and makes them all speak different languages, causing them to be very confused and then want to walk away from each other. If you've ever been in a situation where you're trying to talk to somebody who doesn't speak the same language as you, it's very difficult, and it's a lot easier just to go, oh, well, I'll go hang out with the people who speak my language instead of actually make the effort to learn a new language, which is, something I've avoided doing. And I live in Canada and I don't want to speak French. And now for option 2, where God is a giant douchebag, is that, he got kind of pissed off that people were figuring out how to do stuff and was like, alright, we gotta screw with them. And the saying where, they're gonna make a tower where its tops will reach the heavens, a really old saying that, the skyscrapers, that's why we named them skyscraper, because we thought they were gonna scrape the sky. We're not very smart people. So when you build something really, really tall, you say it's going to heaven, because heaven's supposed to be really high up there in the air, which is a nice thing to say, oh, we're going to build a tower that's, the highest thing ever, and totally show off our amazing engineering and architectural skills, but it doesn't mean you're actually going to park it in God's living room. Now, because when everybody spreads out because they don't speak the same language and they go to their selective areas of the world, this causes a huge problem in my mind. Because once people get together and everybody starts working together, you get great ideas and stuff. Like if you look at a graph that shows how humanity has been working over time, the second that we all start to settle down and clump together in big cities, the more cool stuff we get. I mean, we had electricity, and light bulbs, and the Snuggie. Those are 3 things you need for sure. But if we had not all grouped together and we had spread out as far as possible, this would have never happened because we wouldn't have been able to rely on other people to provide services. We would have had to have been a 100% efficient system ourselves, which is one of the great benefits of having a city or an urban environment where, you don't have to actually grow your own food. You can maybe make watches, sell the watches, and then go buy potatoes and bread downtown. Therefore, people can now tell the time, and you still get to eat. And this brings us to the moral of the story, which I believe is learn to communicate, god damn it! Because if people had not, been all pissed off and went to their separate circles and, just stuck with the people that they communicated with, they would have finished building the tower, which, by the way, they didn't. They left it, and, now we got a half tower built somewhere, and that's not safe for anybody, because if, little kids get walking in there, things could fall. But if they had worked together and, gotten past their silly little language barrier, which seems kind of like an odd idea for God to do, it's like, oh, just screw with their languages, they'll never be able to figure that out, ever, even though now, today, we have people who are able to speak 6 to 12 million languages, and walk pretty much anywhere and go, where the heck's the bathroom? I gotta pee. It's a great skill, by the way. So this also brings us to the comment question of the day. Do you think it is actually a good idea for us to learn how to communicate together? I know it may seem like a stupid question, but is there merit in the idea that you should just stick with your select group of people that only speak your language instead of wasting time learning how to speak another language just to be able to do the same thing? Is it easier to just skip over the communication problem and just start working on, say, making a cool toaster? Or should you learn another language like maybe German or English, if you're not watching this in English? I don't know how you did that. And then learn how to make a toast. So are there things that involve needing to know another language, or are there not? Please leave it below, along with all your comments, questions, concerns, and kaleidoscopes. That is it for this episode of The Chains Project. Thank you for watching. I love you. And that guy behind you, kind of, but not the other guy. He's to put a shirt on, first of all. Not what I like. And I was working on outro, but I was busy winning a medal for being good at math.